Hello, and a very warm welcome. I want to start by asking you a question. Have you ever felt invisible? I remember sitting in my first international team meeting years ago. I was surrounded by brilliant people from all over the world. I had ideas, I had opinions, I wanted to contribute. But all those thoughts were trapped in my head, locked behind the barrier of language. It was a feeling of complete invisibility. Many of us have been taught that the key to unlocking English is hard work, memorizing rules, drilling flashcards, studying grammar charts. But what if that's the slow, painful path? What if there's a smarter way? Today, we're going to explore the single most powerful, natural, and enjoyable method for mastering the English language, the simple act of reading. In this definitive guide, you will not only understand why reading is your secret weapon, but you will also get a complete, step-by-step blueprint to make it the core of your journey to fluency. Let's begin with the most visible and exciting benefit, an explosive, almost automatic, expansion of your vocabulary. The traditional method of learning from vocabulary lists is deeply flawed. It's like collecting individual Lego bricks without instructions. You have the pieces, but you don't know how to build anything with them, and they are easily lost. Reading hands you the fully built castle and allows you to appreciate how each brick contributes to the magnificent whole. This is the power of contextual anchoring. Let me tell you a story. Imagine you're reading a novel and you encounter this sentence. After a long and difficult journey, reaching the summit of the mountain was a triumphant moment for the climbers. You might know the word happy or successful, but triumphant has a different weight. It carries a sense of victory after a great struggle. Your brain doesn't just learn a definition. It anchors the word triumphant to the image of the climbers, the feeling of the cold wind, and the emotion of their hard-won victory. Then, a few chapters later, you read, "He delivered a triumphant speech after winning the election." Now your brain makes a new connection. It sees the same feeling of victory applied in a different context. This is how your vocabulary grows, not as a list of isolated words, but as a rich, three-dimensional web of meaning, emotion, and context, making the words both memorable and usable. Now, let's address the topic that often causes the most stress, grammar. I want to debunk a myth. Myth. You must master grammar rules before you can understand complex texts. Reality. You master grammar rules by understanding complex texts. This is a profound shift in thinking. I call it developing your grammar intuition. Your brain is a pattern recognition supercomputer, far more powerful than any grammar app. When you read consistently, you are feeding this supercomputer a massive data set of correct, natural English. Your brain subconsciously analyzes thousands of sentences, identifying patterns in how they are built. Over time, you develop an intuitive gut feeling for what sounds right. You'll find yourself writing a sentence like, "If I had known you were coming, I would have baked a cake," and you won't be thinking about the third conditional tense. It will just feel correct because you've seen that pattern hundreds of times before. You are absorbing the structure of the language by osmosis, just as you did with your native language as a child. This process is also an incredible workout for your brain. Let's talk about a concept from cognitive science called cognitive load. This refers to the total amount of mental effort being used in your working memory. Traditional study methods, like trying to memorize a grammar rule while translating a sentence, create very high cognitive load. This is why you feel so exhausted after just 30 minutes of studying. Reading, especially when it's a story you enjoy, creates a much lower cognitive load. Because you are engaged and motivated by the content, your brain can sustain the learning activity for much longer periods. It's the difference between forcing yourself to lift a heavy weight one time versus going for a long, enjoyable hike. Both build muscle, but one is a sustainable practice you can do every day. Reading builds your mental agility and processing speed without burning you out. This mental workout directly translates into your output skills, your ability to write and speak. There is a simple law of creation. You cannot create what you have not first consumed. An empty well provides no water. Reading is the act of methodically filling your mental well with the high-quality language you will need to communicate your own ideas. But let's take this a step further. I want to introduce you to a powerful concept: steal like an artist. This means you don't just passively read, you actively collect and adapt the language you love. Keep a dedicated notebook or a digital file. When you encounter a sentence structure that you find elegant or powerful, write it down. Let's do it together right now. Imagine you read this sentence in a book. The ancient forest was profoundly silent, holding its breath under a thick blanket of snow. It's beautiful, right? Now let's steal its structure. The structure is: place was adjective, holding its noun under a noun of noun. Now let's create our own sentence. How about this? The busy marketplace was wonderfully chaotic, holding its energy under a thick blanket of noise. Do you see what just happened? You just learned how to express a complex idea in a sophisticated way. This is how you move from saying the market was noisy to creating vivid, compelling descriptions. Beyond the words and sentences, reading is your passport to understanding English-speaking cultures. Language is the DNA of culture, and reading is like having a microscope to examine it. Without this cultural understanding, communication can fail even with perfect grammar. Let me give you a detailed example. Imagine you're working with colleagues from both the UK and the US. You might read an American business book and notice the language is very direct, action-oriented, and optimistic. Then you might read a British novel and notice the communication is often more indirect, filled with understatement and a dry, sarcastic wit. When a British character says, "That's not half bad," they might actually mean it's excellent. An American character would likely just say, "That's excellent." Understanding this difference through reading prevents real-world miscommunication. You learn that when your American boss says, "I need this by Friday," they mean it directly. When your British colleague says, "It would be ever so helpful if we could have this by Friday," they likely mean the exact same thing, just expressed through a different cultural lens. Reading gives you this nuanced, insider understanding. This deep well of knowledge directly solves one of the most common and painful problems for learners: your mind going blank when you try to speak. The solution is your mental library. Let's expand this metaphor. You are the architect, the builder, and the chief librarian of this magnificent structure in your mind. Every book you read is a new wing. A collection of fantasy novels builds your wing of myth and adventure, filled with words like quest, destiny, and enchantment. A series of articles about technology builds your wing of innovation, with shelves dedicated to algorithms, interfaces, and disruption. Your job as the librarian isn't just to acquire new books, but also to know your collection. This is why rereading books in English is so powerful. When you reread a favorite book, you're not just enjoying the story again. You are walking through a familiar wing of your library, reinforcing your knowledge of where everything is and noticing details you missed the first time. The more you read and reread, the more organized and accessible your mental library becomes. Now, how do we make sure the books in our library can actually come off the shelf and out of our mouths? This is where we must practice reading out loud. This technique creates a physical, neurological bridge between the knowledge in your brain and the muscles in your mouth. Let's talk about prosody, the rhythm, stress, and intonation of speech. It's the music of a language. You can have perfect grammar and vocabulary, but if your prosody is wrong, you will sound unnatural and be difficult to understand. Reading aloud is your rehearsal space for this music. I recommend you try this exercise. Take a paragraph from a book. Read it silently first to understand it. Then, read it out loud and record yourself. Now, find an audiobook version of that book and listen to how the professional narrator reads the same paragraph. Listen to their music. Where do they pause? Which words do they emphasize? Now, try to read your paragraph again, this time mimicking their rhythm and intonation. This is one of the fastest ways to start sounding less like you're reading words and more like you're speaking music. The ultimate result of all this deep immersion is that you begin to think directly in English. Let's be clear, the habit of mentally translating everything is the single greatest barrier to fluent, spontaneous conversation. It's like playing a video game with a terrible internet connection. There is a constant lag between your intention and your action. Reading helps you destroy that lag. When you are truly captivated by a story, your brain enters a state of flow. You are so focused on the plot and the characters that you forget you are reading in a foreign language. In those moments, your brain isn't translating, it's comprehending directly. The more you can achieve this state of flow, the more you are building and strengthening the direct-to-English neural pathway. Here's an advanced technique to accelerate this: the internal debate. Choose a simple topic, for example, is social media good or bad? Then, in your head, have a debate with yourself in English. On one hand, social media connects people across the world, but on the other hand, it can create anxiety and social comparison. This forces you to formulate arguments, use transition words, and think critically, all entirely within the English language. So, the case is made. Reading is your superpower. But how do you start? The most critical decision is choosing the right material. This is about finding the sweet spot I call the comfortably challenging zone. Let me give you a very practical tool for this: the rule of 5 fingers. Open any book to any page. Read that page. For every word you don't know, hold up 1 finger. If you get to the end of the page and you have 5 fingers up, this book is probably too difficult for you right now. It will be a frustrating experience. Put it back on the shelf with a promise to return to it in the future. If you hold up 0 fingers, the book is likely too easy and won't teach you much. The sweet spot? 1, 2, or 3 fingers. That's your comfortably challenging zone. It means you're learning new things without killing your momentum. For beginners, a great place to start is with a series of graded readers from publishers like Penguin or Oxford, which are specifically designed for different learner levels. Once you've found your level, the next golden rule is to choose a topic that sets your mind on fire with curiosity. Your willpower is a finite resource. Your curiosity is an infinite one. It is always better to read a simple book about a topic you are passionate about than it is to read a classic novel that you find boring. So, do a self-assessment. What do you already love? If you love history, find engaging nonfiction books about your favorite era. If you love technology, follow tech reviewers and read their blogs. If you love fantasy and adventure, dive into the world of young adult YA fiction. Books like The Hunger Games or Harry Potter are written in accessible language, but deal with complex, engaging themes. And mix up the formats. Your brain craves novelty. Alternate between novels, blogs, news articles, magazines, and even comic books. The more varied your reading diet, the more motivated you will remain. Now, the million-dollar question: how do we integrate this into our busy lives? The answer lies in the science of habit formation. We must make reading so easy and automatic that it becomes a natural part of our day. The most effective technique for this is called habit stacking. You don't create a new habit from scratch. You stack it on top of an existing one. Don't just make a vague promise to read more. Create a specific recipe. After I pour my morning coffee, I will read for 10 minutes. The existing habit of drinking coffee is the trigger. After I get into bed at night, I will read 1 page of my book before turning off the light. During my lunch break, after I finish eating, I will read 1 article on my phone. By linking the new, desired behavior to an old, automatic one, you're essentially tricking your brain into adopting the habit with much less resistance. Let's build on this and design a complete system for creating an unbreakable reading habit. First, as we said, stack your habit. Choose your trigger. Second, design your environment. Make reading the path of least resistance. If you want to read more, Leave an English book on your coffee table, on your nightstand, on your desk. Put your Kindle app on the home screen of your phone and move the distracting social media apps into a folder on the second page. You want to make it easier to start reading than it is to start scrolling. Third, create a reading ritual. Make it a sacred, enjoyable time. Find your favorite chair. Make a cup of tea. Put on some instrumental music. When you make the experience itself pleasant, your brain starts to crave it. It becomes a form of relaxation, not a chore. And finally, learn to see the world as a collection of reading pockets. No one has a spare, uninterrupted hour anymore. But everyone has pockets of time. 5 minutes waiting for the bus. 10 minutes in a waiting room. 7 minutes while your lunch is heating up. Instead of seeing this as dead time, see it as a reading opportunity. These pockets are where you can make serious progress. 5 10-minute pockets throughout the day is almost an hour of reading. Even with the best habits, you will face challenges. Let's create your reader's first aid kit. The most common problem is encountering unknown words. We've established that looking up every word is a terrible strategy. So, let's refine our approach with what I call vocabulary tria. As you read, you are the doctor, and you must quickly categorize each unknown word. Category 1. Critical. Is this word absolutely essential to understanding the main idea of this paragraph? Does the entire meaning hinge on this word? If so, this is a critical case. You have permission to stop and look it up quickly. Category 2. Interesting. Is this word interesting, but you can generally understand the sentence without it? This is not an emergency. Highlight the word or jot it down in a notebook, and you can look it up later after your reading session is over. Category 3. Ignore. Is this an obscure adjective or a word that doesn't seem important? This is a minor scratch. Your best course of action is to ignore it completely and keep your reading momentum going. The goal is flow. The second major challenge is the dreaded reading slump, that period when you lose all motivation and just don't feel like reading. When this happens, do not try to force it. That will only make you resent the act of reading. A reading slump is a signal from your brain that it needs a change. So, the first aid is to change your input method. If you've been reading a dense nonfiction book, give yourself a 1-week break and switch to listening to a fun English podcast. Or watch a season of a TV show. Let your brain absorb the language in a different way. After a week of listening, coming back to reading will feel fresh and exciting again. And if motivation is low in general, always go back to your why. Why are you doing this? And always start smaller than you think you need to. Commit to reading just one paragraph, or for just 2 minutes. The hardest part of any task is getting started. Once you start, inertia often takes over, and you'll find yourself reading for much longer. What if the challenge isn't motivation, but the sheer size of a text like a long novel? The strategy is aggressive chunking. You are not reading a 500-page book. You are just reading the next chapter. And if a chapter feels too long, you're just reading the next 10 pages. Break the intimidating goal down into non-intimidating, manageable steps. Here's another pro tip for long novels: pre-reading. Before you start a new chapter, find a short, spoiler-free summary of that chapter online. This is not cheating, it's a strategy. It gives your brain a map of the upcoming plot. Knowing the basic events allows your brain to relax and focus more of its energy on absorbing the language, the descriptions, and the dialogue, rather than struggling to figure out what's happening. And remember the power of finishing. The psychological boost you get from finishing your first full novel in English is immeasurable. It is a milestone that proves to you, on a deep level, that fluency is not just a dream, but an achievable reality. So, after this deep and extensive exploration, let's step back and summarize the core findings from our lab today. We have discovered that reading is not just a way to learn English. It is arguably the most holistic and effective way. It is a vocabulary building machine. It is an intuitive grammar teacher. It is a cognitive workout that sharpens your mind. It is a direct line to understanding new cultures. And it is the most effective way to build your mental library, cure the blank mind problem, and begin thinking directly in English. The strategies are clear. Choose material at the right level that you are passionate about. Build a consistent, daily habit by making it easy, obvious, and enjoyable. And have a clear plan for overcoming the inevitable challenges of unknown words and low motivation. The secret ingredient, the catalyst for all of this, is consistency. A few pages, every single day, will compound over time into a level of fluency you can only imagine right now. Reading is an act of hope. It's an act of profound self-investment. It's a commitment you make to your future self, a self who is more confident, more connected, and more capable. The person you will be 1 year from now is being built by the small habits you choose to start today. So here is my final challenge to you. Your homework for tonight is not to study. It is to do something much more enjoyable. Find one article, one short story, one blog post in English about a topic you are genuinely, deeply curious about. And just read the first page. That's it. Begin the journey. Thank you for investing this time in yourself today. If you found this guide valuable, please give it a like so it can find others who need it, and subscribe for more deep dives into smart language learning. Please share in the comments, what is the first book or article you are going to read in English? I would be truly honored to know. Thank you for watching.